This is the Unscripted Podcast. All right, today we're talking about your family.
We're going to talk about squib loads and legacies.
Yeah, absolutely. Squib loads and legacies. If you don't know what a squib load is, just Google it right quick. It's really dangerous.
Really dangerous.
Yep. Today we're talking about the family, and so that's you in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
Guaranteed.
Yep. And
if you're here today, you were part of a family. If you're listening today, you were part of a family at some point.
That's right. So how was your weekend?
Man, you know some guys in the church, Wesley Skelton and his wife Denise and Joe and Aaron Wales started this. They went to this camp out in Oklahoma or somewhere a few years ago, and they thought, man, we got to do this here. And so they came back and they called us 3 or 4 years ago and said, hey, we're going to start this camp, and would y'all be interested in coming? And we said, yeah, we'd like to help you get it kind of going and everything. And
that first year you went up there without a jacket and froze.
Bob, I'm telling you, we had just moved to Hattiesburg too, and it was freezing.
I remember the phone conversation. No, honey, just get me a hoodie. I'll be fine.
Yeah,
it's just Kentucky.
And I remember. Bob, it was 25 degrees the whole time, and we stayed outside the whole weekend. And what was worse is
Chris had a cold for 3 months.
There was like we hadn't even unboxed our stuff from moving here, you know. And there was a little family in front of us. I mean, sweetest family in the world. And there's about 6 of them, right? And they're all like 9 months apart. You know what I mean?
Right.
They've got 9 kids and their average age.
We know some families like that.
Right. And so they're sitting there and they're just skinny as a rail. Mm-hmm. And they're just like a bag of antlers, you know, and they're just freezing plumb to death. And I remember thinking I'm cold, but I ain't that kind of cold, you know. And I remember because I'd got my blanket off my bed and put it on me, and I done got it good and warm. And I remember taking it and wrapping it around all them youngins.
Right.
And I just saw them kids just kind of ball up and like, oh, I just can't believe how good this.
So good.
You know, how good this.
I'm getting some 98.6 from that big boy.
Yeah, and all I had on was my hoodie and work breeches. Right. So I'm up there with like a sweatshirt and pajamas on, basically.
Chris is sweating.
Freezing to death, but it was a good lesson.
Yeah, so it's what, Legacy Family Camp East?
Yep. And so we went back this year again, and we had it a couple years since then. And, you know, the whole idea behind it is just like is being pointed and building a legacy, you know, with your family.
What do you mean by that?
So, you know, there's a biblical hope, and then there's a worldly hope. Maybe I can describe it like this. I mean, it hadn't been described at the camp this way, but maybe this is a way of doing it. The world has a hope that if they get these odds in their favor, you know, like so here's an example. The guys in the shop, they used to do this thing when the lottery would get on up to hundreds of millions of dollars, and I don't ever know what the number would be.
60 of us gets in together, we'll have a better chance.
Yes, we'll do 60, and we'll all put in $50 or something, you know. And so let's just say we all buy $3,000 worth of tickets, right? In their mind, they're stacking the odds in their favor, but when it's a 1 in 1.7 billion chance, if you put
0.00000
and you put 1.7 billion out here, 3,000 is statistically so close to zero that you're no closer to winning at buying 1 ticket than you are buying 3,000 tickets.
Right.
So what happens is, excuse me, I'm still fighting this little bit of a cold, and this weekend didn't help much. But what happens is that the world looks at hope in the sense of like, we got to figure out a way that I can stack the odds, or maybe that if I do these things enough, then it'll work out in my favor. You know, kind of used to the way they give out scholarships. You remember they used to, like, you know, the Bear won a whole lot of championships, but one of the ways he won a whole lot of championship was that if he thought somebody would go somewhere else, he'd hand him a scholarship. So he can. You
talking about that Alabama team that Tennessee beat a couple weeks ago?
I am. Listen, okay, yeah. There's going to be a lot of Georgia fans this weekend. I'm just going to tell you, there's going to be a lot
of Georgia,
and it's because of Tennessee fans. fans. I'm just going to tell you.
I really think
It's because no, you
I
can
really
think all
think
you
that
want, Bob.
there's going to be a lot of and at the time that this is recording, this is when Georgia's number 1 and Tennessee's number 2, and when they're fixing to play. So I don't know when this podcast is going to come out. But I really think that a lot of Alabama fans are going to root for Tennessee so they can get the chance to play them in the SEC championship.
That may go down, but I'm just going to tell you.
They'll be living out that verse. Their mouths draw near to me, but their hearts are far from me. They draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me.
So, so the idea behind the camp. Get back to the camp and off that awful subject. And
you brought up the bear. I just brought up truth that's present today.
Well, I do know. Ben told me last night. I know y'all carve pumpkins at the student center.
Mm-hmm.
Ben said he carved
Beautiful
the ugliest pumpkin, and I said no. I guarantee you, Bob carved a T one. And he
that was Case's decision.
And so, well, it still didn't mean I want the ugliest one.
Literally, it was the scariest pumpkin in all of Hattiesburg.
Yeah, because what we're scared of is that we're going to have to hear the gloating for another week. Another week.
Hey, I have been quiet and humble for 15 years.
You have not.
Yes, I have.
You have not. None of y'all have. You've been saving it and storing it.
Storing it. All that build up.
Yeah, so it's coming out. But so the idea behind the legacy camp is that we can you can never. Biblical hope is hope with an expectation.
Yeah, certain.
Yep, a certain expectation. Like Hebrews 11:7, it says, Noah, who being divinely warned of things to come. That means that he was told about things that were going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Things yet not seen.
Yet not seen, right?
Moved with godly fear.
Moved with godly fear, preparing the ark, and condemned the world in unrighteousness and saving of his
saving of his household.
So Noah builds the ark with an hope,
with true biblical hope, and expecting that what God said was going to happen.
Yeah. So Noah had to build the ark. Noah had to do the things that God said in order to preserve his family. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. He saved his family. And so the idea of biblical hope is that I can do these things, and I can guarantee that I can have an expectation of the outcome. Now, does that mean that everything's going to work out the way the way I think it will in my mind? No. I mean, Hebrews 11:13. God tells Abraham, I need you to come out of your land. I need you to leave Ur. I need you to come over here to this place I'm going to give you, and I'm going to make you a nation. I'm going to give you a land, and I'm going to give you a seed promise. And really, Abraham got none of those things if you really stack it up in the eyes of the world, because Abraham had to buy the land to bury his wife in Canaan. So he never, that's why verse 13 says, these, the people before, having died in faith, never having obtained the promise. Well, their hope was that they understood what the Lord wanted them to do, and they did what the Lord. So hope and faith are almost the same thing, but they're not. Hope is an understanding, and faith is the movement. So hope, Noah saw that there was going to be a storm. There was going to be Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. And so he's going to destroy the earth. Well, Noah had never seen it rain, never had experienced these things, but Noah still had to listen to what God said. So Noah, build the ark. Okay, Lord, I'm going to build the ark. Because Noah, in his hope, knew that some point in the future, God was going to bring this torrential event upon the earth. So Noah just saw it. So his hope was in the ark, right? His hope was in the ark, but really his hope was in God.
Right.
Because what he did was what God told him to do. And so this legacy camp, the idea behind this is that if we're honest with ourselves, I just want to say this. Sometimes I say things and it comes out mean. I don't mean them that way, but they do. But if we're honest with ourselves in the church, the walls are broken and they're falling in. And when we've gotten to the point that we consider the church growing and we're baptizing our kids, and we're putting that as a mark of faithfulness. We record the baptisms we've had that year, and 13 of them have been our kids, and 2 of them are people in the world. Well, out of those 13 kids, statistically, only about 3 are going to stay faithful. The walls are broken and they're falling in. And so Somebody's got to be Nehemiah.
Yeah, and dude, that's where I just turned to. Nehemiah 4, when they're trying to build the walls and they get them half built, and they're rebuilding this thing, and it says, so it was when the Jews who dwelt near them that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they'll be upon us. And the challenge that was there. And so Nehemiah, he said, I looked and arose and I said to the nobles and to the leaders and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And he says, you got to fight for them.
Yeah.
And that's so there's a huge breakdown in the American family. And I did print off some statistics that I think are relevant. And
so why are you going to give the statistics for?
Well, one is to show so many times people in society, they think, well, it's just evil, or they think
What's evil?
Whenever they see something like what I want to show I believe that there's a breakdown in America, and of course that problem is sin. But one of the biggest things is most of our biggest challenges in America are because of broken homes. And so these statistics I'm going to tell you are things that come about that we see in society as horrible things or challenging things. And really the root of it is because our houses aren't in line. Our families aren't lined up with the way that God would have them be lined up with. Is that you got single mothers, or you got daddies who aren't present in their children's lives. And so all that this is the outcome of it. This is the fruit of it. And so a broken home gives us 53% of the teen moms, girls that start off being a mom when they're a teenager, more than half of them come from a broken home. 63% of our youth suicides, broken homes. 71% of high school dropouts. 85% of youth who go to prison. 90% of homeless or runaway children, broken homes. There are boys without daddies. They looked at 70 different metrics.
Boys without daddies present, you mean?
Without daddies present, yeah, because
right.
they had DNA.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I'm trying to put this.
Boys without fathers present. They measure far worse on more than 70 different metrics.
Wow.
Of course, you know this one. You're the one who brought this to my attention. Today we're measuring suicides by what?
First graders.
Yeah. 82% of our school shooters grew up with dysfunctional families, without parents together for at least part of their lives. Then 26 out of 27 deadliest mass shootings, period, not just the schools, but 26 out of 27 deadliest mass shooters in the U.S. came from fatherless homes. And so there's just a
95%.
Yeah, there's a huge breakdown in
So these statistics, really what they do is they validate.
Well, they tick me off.
Well, they validate what we know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, like what it does is it puts a statistic to something that we already know. But the problem
we're not telling our listeners anything new. We're just putting a number with it.
That's right. The problem with it is that we see all these stinking components that come into play because of it. And so we got the killing, we got the teen pregnancies, which you know these statistics right here don't cover sexually transmitted diseases. They don't cover rape and all these things that come along with this stuff. Those are just hard facts. And I mean, how many more do we have to show? And so
I want to list about 4 things of reasons why our homes are breaking up. So that's the outcome of what happens from a broken home.
Okay.
So here's why we're breaking up.
Tennessee fans?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So no, you know how loyal they are. I mean, we spit
like
orange through
bad hunting dog.
I mean, we went through Dooley and that dude who come from Alabama and the Butch Jones brick by brick mess. All right, we went through it all. We're loyal.
Okay, go ahead.
We stayed around even when Kiffin ran away in the middle of the night. Anyways, all right. There's some funny Tennessee jokes. All right, so only Matthew 19 gives us a reason for divorce, sexual immorality.
Right.
Only 20 to 40% of extramarital affairs are responsible for 20 to 40% of the breakdown in today. Like, we're getting divorced for whatever reason we want to. Only 20 to 40% are saying
between 20 and 40% are saying that
they cheated on me.
Adultery. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So when they polled these people, financial issues were listed as the last straw. 41% said it was because of finances. That's why we gave up. The American Federation of Divorce Attorneys says that 50% of all divorces came from pornography. And then you have an increased infidelity rate of more than 300% if you're viewing porn.
Say that again.
There, you have a 300% more likely chance to get divorced if you're viewing porn regularly. So pornography use increases marital infidelity rate by more than 300%. All right, so 11 is the average age that the child is first exposed to pornography. 94% of our kids will see it by the age of 14. 47% of families in the U.S. report that pornography is a problem in their home. All right, so here's the reason why people who got divorced, 65% of them said this is why: communication problems. So it didn't start with infidelity. It didn't start with financial problems. It didn't. But so it all starts with me. But it's our communication that was really the breakdown of it. So 2/3 roughly, and then this was followed by couples' inability to resolve issues. 43%.
That basically means we just couldn't get along.
And so,
so that packaged. What do we do with this package?
All right, here's another interesting study, and so this came from a book called The Case for Marriage. And so these researchers took a group of people who said they were unhappy in their marriage, but these people decided to stay for 5 years.
I think I've got this book.
And so when they remained in their marriage for 5 years, those people who once reported they were unhappy, 86% of them reported satisfaction in their marriage after they stayed 5 years. And so, number one, you're going to need endurance and patience, and don't throw in the towel just because you're unhappy about something
right now.
And so you're going to have to fight, just like Nehemiah says. Hey, everything is down, and so remember the Lord great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses. But in order for you to fight for your sons, your daughters, your wives and your houses, you got to remember the Lord first, and He's got to be put first. And that's a big challenge. And so we want to today, we've established there's a problem. Everybody knows there's a problem, but today I wanted us to for me and you to kind of look at how can we build some legacy principles. What are some ways that we can keep our children faithful? I mean, I'm up there with guys and did this marriage retreat recently, and I'm sitting there with an elder in the church, all these guys on the porch, and we're having the family talk. We're having the guy talk, big boy britches, and then there's the elder who talks about he's got a faithful child, but he said, I've got another one who's wayward. And he's talking about those challenges. And then another guy speaks up and he says, and who's got kids that are 16, 17, and 18 right now in his house. And he's crying and he said, what you say, he said, scares the mess out of me. He said, because I know how faithful your family is. And he said, I know of other people, and he named a prominent preacher in the Lord's church who's got an unfaithful child. And and he's made this public, and hopefully this has changed by now. I don't know, but Steve Higginbotham, he wrote that book,
The Prodigal, something like that.
When the prodigal's your son.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But one thing that he said too about that was
Steve or the
Steve did. This guy quoted Steve from his book, or just quoted Steve. Period.
You're just quoting Steve because he preaches in Knoxville.
Yeah, Carnes. And so he used to preach at South Green Street. So anyway, so they knew him directly, and but he said, you know, it's not a reflection on God. God made his children, and his children still rebelled. And so while we certainly use the as an elder how he manages his household and does he have faithful children, sometimes it's not a direct reflect though on the parents. That sometimes that I mean, I know there's times whenever I rebelled from my family that, I mean, that was on me. I knew what was right, and you train that child in the way it should go, and so, but he said, you know, Adam and Eve rebelled from God. That was not a reflection on God. So wherever you're at today, you know, don't blame God for if there's some kind of dysfunction in your family, or if there's some kind of rebellion that goes on, and that it all boils down to selfishness when you begin with any sin. And so,
but certainly examine.
What do you mean by that? Certainly examine what?
So,
certainly examine what's happening.
Yeah, well, the way that you said that, and I know you didn't mean this, but the way you said that, it would imply that we need to clear this up. That you know, no matter what you do, your kids are liable to turn out unfaithful anyways.
I'm not trying to say that. Yeah,
I know,
right.
but we don't want to paint that picture.
No, not at all.
Because then people may think, well, you know, I mean, it just ain't even worth trying. You know, but you know, I think that there's some important things that we got to understand. That while Adam and Eve did turn out you know, they did have an unfaithful moment. While, you know, we can look through history and see periods of, and we don't have time to study this today, but we did an in-depth study on David while we were there and his parenting.
Yeah. Oh man.
And I'm telling you, Bob, it was. I've read these verses 10,000 times about David, and it was like these verses just. I mean, they flat laid on like a ton of bricks.
They'll jump out at you.
And I'm telling you, when you're focused on it, and I thought about that very thing there, that these verses end up becoming prominent only because we're focusing on a subject, right? And then I thought, you know, water finds its own level always. Always. So whatever I focus on is going to become important to me and my family. So I was thinking about this thing here. I can say a lot of things, you know, whatever, in my family. And I can talk about a lot of things and how many parents, Bob, have you sat with unfaithful children that are upset about it, right? Because they don't know why. And one of their most common phrases is they were always what?
We went to church.
We were always in the church.
So you brought this up too in a recent meeting. So if I take my kids every Sunday morning and every Wednesday night to Sunday school,
and Wednesday night class,
Bible class, they get 45 minutes,
and that's if at 6:00 or 6:30, whenever the bell rings, they're coming through, and instantly, right?
The teacher starts.
The teacher starts, right?
And they get the 45-minute lesson.
45 minutes, and I'm talking about from the ones that sit in those little buckets. You know, the little...
Yeah, what's the age, what's the time period starting? 0. Cradle roll. I mean, like I did this from, when I consider cradle roll, I'm talking about from hatch all the way till they graduated high school. You know, like from age of 18. I just used 18 as the number because that's about the average age of 18. And so go ahead. Yeah, so what kind of Bible knowledge, education could we expect our kids to have if we have them at Sunday school every time and Wednesday night service and we don't miss one, and the teacher starts when the bell rings and they get 45 minutes worth of Bible? Yep.
So I took an hour and a half a week, right? 45 minutes times 2. 45 minutes times 2 times 52, and I did the math. And, you know, this is just a numbers thing for Chris, you know. And I took that time, I just looked at how long our kids go to government school. You know, they go to government school from X amount of time in the morning to X amount of time in the afternoon, equates to this amount of hours a day, right? And so what I did was I used that as a metrics of time, right? From 0 to 18, how much time they went to school, in government school, and then how much time they spent in Bible class. And they don't make it out of the first grade. Just let that sink in. if you go to school from 0 to 18, from kindergarten up to 18, right? That's the time frame I used. But I used from Bible class from 0 to 18. That means that you went to every Bible class. And I'm not talking about when you're sick, the teacher starting 10 minutes late
because
they yapping, whatever the case may be. Whatever. I'm talking about you went to every single one of them. You didn't make it out of the first grade worth equivalent. Now, I'm not a fan of government schools. I mean, I'll just put that on the table. I'm not. But I can tell you this right here, that if you can make it through 12th grade in government schools, you'll still be better equipped than you make it through the first grade in government schools.
Yeah.
And what we do.
And so our kids are getting, if we have them every single time, our kids are getting a first grade, hour by hour, an equivalent to a first grade education.
A first grade education. And that's what grade is that? Age is that, like 6? 5 or 6 years old? 7 years old, maybe?
6, 7. Mm-hmm.
So that means, like, just think about this. Turning a 7-year-old spiritually loose.
In the world.
Turning a 7-year-old loose on a college campus. Like last night was Halloween for us. And I took, Bo was like, Daddy, I want to go trick-or-treating. I was like, okay. We hadn't been trick-or-treating in probably 3 years, like really going out doing it since we, so I was like, okay, I'm going to take you tonight. So me and some of my friends, like my neighbor, Andrew, we put the hay on a trailer and rode them around, let them go around the neighborhoods. And the first thing you got to do when you get home is take the candy away from your kids.
Yeah. Check it.
And Bo's like 8 or 9. I can't remember how old he is. He's 8 or something. Maybe he's 9.
Daddy, why are you doing that?
Yeah, why? Because he's not mature enough to eat the candy properly. And yet what we got to realize is that when we turn our kids loose and we just think that Bible class is the solution, then we're really setting ourselves up for failure. And that's far too great of a burden on a teacher.
Yeah. That's
far too great, and it was never God's design. The Bible class, at best, should be a supplement.
At best.
It's a granola bar at 3 o'clock when you're starving. That's what it is. And so it was never designed to live off of. Well, what happens in our families is that we don't think about the things that I've got to guard my kids against. The things that I want my kids to know absolutely are important. And we took some time this weekend with our boys and just went off and you want to do litmus test, right? Mm-hmm. And because one of the sessions we, did was like how to discipline without. They used another D word, but like how to discipline without discouraging. Mm-hmm. How to discipline without discouraging. And so I went off. We went off our boys, and we just asked them all, kind of, in their own way, like, do you think we love you? And I wanted to hear the way they answered it. Do you think I want you to go to heaven? Those are the two things that I want. Those are the two questions I want my kids to be able to ask and answer. Honestly,
without being a robot.
Right, exactly. I wanted to hear the way they answered it. I don't particularly care about the.
Yes, Daddy. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten. Or you take that kid that they put on Oprah, and all he could do was shout,
scream and holler at.
Hear ye,
the Lord, the word of the Lord,
the God, the Lord is one. And they're like, yeah, well, tell me what it means to know Jesus, and the kid can't say anything.
So we had those chats with our boys, and you could see the different levels in each one of them, sure. in maturity, and it was just for a litmus test for us because, the idea of being scared, doggone Bob, all of us are scared.
Shoot, yeah.
And the reason why we're all scared is because the world is stacking up on us, and it's not that it's because of these things. It's because of the breakdown of the home. I mean, just think about in our church family. Now, I'm not saying we don't have a great church family. I mean, they're awesome. But just think about how divorce, and I know that I'm saying this of everybody that's listening. I'm not just saying this about us at KW, but think about how much divorce and the breakdown of the home, the leadership. I mean, think about how it's affected every dynamic in every home in some kind of way.
If Satan can't get us on doctrine, he'll because we need men to serve as shepherds in the church. And doggone it, it's a struggle right now to try to find. And some churches are placing in the next warm body who's not qualified.
Yeah, they can fog up a mirror.
That's right. And so, what's happening is if Satan, he can't get us on doctrine, what he's going to do is he's going to break apart our homes. And so he shifted away from he understands he can't control what's said from the pulpits, but what he can control is what I'm doing every single day in my house.
Jeremiah writes it like this, and this is the Lord responding to Jeremiah, and he says, if you've run with the footmen and they worried you, how can you contend with the horses? And if the land of peace in which you trusted, they worried you, then how will you join in the floodplain of Jordan? So he's saying, if life, the footman, if life, the normal life, if you've given up on it, you hadn't had a backbone you need to have as a daddy, you hadn't made the things as important to you, you will never survive when the going gets tough.
If you can't keep up with them on foot, you certainly ain't going to keep up with them when they're on the horse.
And so God is even drawing this conclusion, like, I gave you this land, this place, but at the end of the day, you cannot, if you can't live in the land proper, if you just can't dig your gardens, if you can't just plant your wells, if you just can't repair your houses, you're never going to live when calamity comes. You will never make it. And so it's a daily fortification, Bob. You can't rush tomatoes and you can't rush people.
Mm-mm.
And so you got to do the same thing over and over again. You know, I got to get up in the morning and I got to love on my boys a certain special way, and you got to love on yours a certain special way. And we got to do what's right for our family. You know, we cannot. There's a problem with this horizontal comparisons. And we can't worry about any of those things. It's just got to be about what's right for the Donovans, what's right for the Tips, what's right for filling your name when you're listening here.
Yeah, we are not throwing shade at anybody. We say this all the time. We're in the punches of life. We're in this battle right now.
Yeah, the reason why we're saying these things is because we struggle with them too, Bob. And we want the person that's listening to remember these words. Hold on. Hold on. This is not about being scared. Yes, you're going to be scared. This is not about being some kind of dictator. No. What we're talking about is that you need to hold on. At the end of the days, you've got to hold on because water's going to find its own level. You can say all the things that you want to say. You can talk about all the things you want to talk about, but until you live them in your lives, until they're present in your home, until your kids see them, till they see, and I ain't talking about dirty hands. I'm talking about being up to your eyeballs in it here. It ain't about just coming in, brushing off with your hands and going on.
All in.
All in. It'll never find its own level.
Peter said this. He said that God, the Lord Jesus, has begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God. That's what's going to hold your family together, is the power of God. But you got to release that control to Him through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice, that though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials. You're going to have them trials in life. That the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen you love, though now you do not see him, yet believe, and you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory.
Hope, hope, hope.
Yeah, and my faith, and receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. And so your faith, it's more precious than gold, he says. And it's more precious than riches. It's more precious than whatever it is, that dollar that you're chasing. You know, I talk to guys at different times about job things, and you know, guys are goal-oriented minded so many times. Yeah. And I had to check myself all the time about not chasing after a dollar, not having aspirations of making more and more and more and more money, because I understand that it's souls that the Lord is looking at, and the souls that he's looking for. And that's my responsibility in life. And so your faith, though, it's more precious than anything, and it's got to be invested in. Your children's faith has to be invested in, and then one day it's going to be tested. Your faith's going to be tested, and it's going to be tested in front of your family. And one day your family's faith's going to be tested, and you're going to be watching on. And he says it's going to be tested by fire. the idea is that in the end, when the Lord comes back, that it's got to be found to praise, honor, and glory. And I remember hearing you praying a prayer one time, and man, it just echoes in my mind all the time. And I just want to tell. I shared this with somebody the other day, and the words of your prayer, you may or may not remember it, but you said, "Lord, just help my faith to outlive me by one day," and we just want to hold on, and so that's the idea that we have to have, is that, man, my faith's got to be invested in, and we've got to keep going because the test is coming. And so many times we procrastinate, and I procrastinate. And
so let's talk about what we need to do then. So, number one, Colossians 3 and verse 7, let's see here, verse 21. It says, fathers.
I think we're down to like number 4 by now. But yeah, it's on the daddies.
Yeah, number next then. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. There's
the wrath.
Yeah, I mean, it Ephesians 6 says that. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Mm-hmm. But Colossians 3 says, fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. In other words, that means don't drive them in a direction. That's what they're talking about. In Hebrews 10:25, let us love and provoke one another. Mm-hmm. I mean, let us unto love and good works, right?
Is it Ephesians that says, but bring them up
in the nurture and
admonition? Yeah.
Yep. And so, but the idea of provoking is the direction we're driving in. The assembly was to help drive us in a direction, right? Mm-hmm. The provoke,
it's a reinforcement.
Yep. And so, like, I was thinking about this. This is something we were looking at this weekend. Like, look at 2 Samuel 13 with me. This is a pretty powerful thing. So here's one thing that we've got to remember. Number one, I say that like I'm preaching. The one thing we've got to remember is that sin can never be tolerated in our homes. It can never be tolerated in our homes.
Amen.
So in 2 Samuel 13, this is the Amnon and Tamar scenario. You remember this? So
somewhat, yeah.
So Absalom has a sister named Tamar. Absalom and Tamar are full brother and sister, right? Amnon is half brother to Tamar and Absalom, right?
And Amnon, he wants to lie with her, right?
He wants to lie with her,
yeah.
Right? So they concoct this little scheme of how he can get with his sister.
Yeah.
He gets with her and he hates her afterwards, right? And so then Absalom finds out about it. Absalom, is going to kill. He waits. He kind of lies in wait. And
dysfunctional family here, by the way.
King David.
King
David's boys.
And he was a better man than me.
But look. So let's just pick up at verse 20. And Absalom, her brother, said to her, has Amnon been with you? But now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard all of these things, he was very angry. Point, set, done. And that's it. You do not read David took any kind of measures for punishment and any kind of reasoning in this. David was very angry. Point, set, done. And it came to pass after 2 years, Absalom kills his brother. Okay? But Absalom, when he goes away, now the Absalom kills...
David longs for Absalom.
But step back here. Absalom kills his brother, and then Absalom goes and he lives with this guy. Let me see here. Where's it at? It's going to be down here a little bit later. Yeah, Absalom fled to Geshur and the young man, and he goes to this guy. Yeah, the son of Amihud, the king of Geshur. Do you know who this guy is?
Where are you at?
Verse 37.
37, yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking at, we're going on 7 years now, if you kind of do the math here. All right, so Absalom has killed his brother. Now just step back now. Before Absalom's going to be like the guy that's going to try to overthrow, he's going to cause a civil war in Israel. He's going to try to overthrow his daddy. I mean, all the problems that's going to happen, Absalom, this is where it's created, okay? This is the story where he's created. When David sees Absalom kill his brother, he does nothing about it. David's mad at him. This whole hubbub, he goes and look what he does. Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. Do you know who that is?
No.
That's his grandpa. That's his and Tamar's mama's daddy. David had taken their mama as a wife, as kind of a political, a marriage of convenience or whatever. He flees and lives with his grandpa for this amount of years right here. And this is where Absalom is created. David created Absalom. Absalom was a blank sheet, just like every one of our kids were. We cannot, Bob, tolerate sin in our homes.
I've heard this I guess these words echo in my mind with this verse. When David heard of these things, he was very angry. Nothing else happened.
Nothing.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. So let me just tell you, daddies, it's okay to be angry with sin in your house, but that better not be the end of it if you want a legacy.
There's got to be faith. Faith's that evidence.
So there's got to be
fruit.
If there's something wrong in the home, fix it.
Got to be action.
I mean, make sure the proper discipline is administered.
And you might not have the exact way in that moment, but do something.
Yeah, and it's not about, and like you're going to mess it up sometime. And I know the world tells us things like, don't spank your kids, don't I'm just going to tell you, you cannot reason with a 3-year-old with love. Like that makes me feel bad. They don't care. They're
Email
3.
me if you need verses on discipline for the home.
Hit us on Messenger. We got the thing that flashes up here now.
Hit us up, Ben. You put that up right quick. If you got a question, reach out to us. I don't know if you got the exact details or whatever, but my email, roberttips@gmail.com. You can hit us up at our church website, any of those things. But he who spares the rod hates his son. That the words in the direct words in the Bible are not he who spares the rod spoils a child. That's not direct words in the Bible. It says he who spares the rod hates his son.
Yep. And so you cannot, if you want a legacy, the first thing you got to do is you got to realize that they start out as a blank sheet of paper. And whatever gets written on it while they're in your home is in your control by and large. Now, I'm not saying that you put them in a box and let them out when they're 20, because that's not it. We're struggling with how to introduce technology to our kids now. I mean, like the phone scenario. We got our kids one phone that they share this year for the first time because, we call this thing a phone, but shoot, how much do we really use it for a phone?
Oh yeah.
It's minimal what we really use it for a phone.
Yep.
Really, we learned a lesson this year. We thought that maybe it was time to let Aiden, as he's getting into some more advanced math, and I don't know how you guys do it, to use the calculator, but we learned that he's regressing doing that. He's not the recollection of his multiplication tables and things that he should know, like formulas and things like that are not the recall is not as quick. And so we've had to step back, right? And I remember Jessica and I were talking about that, like, well, we got to step backwards now. And I said, you remember when the teacher said, you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket growing up? You're like, well, you're wrong, right? We all have one. So we're struggling with technology. We're struggling, and so we had to get our kids a phone. When they go off with y'all like y'all were taking them to the beach this weekend, or when y'all went up to whatever you're going to do, disaster relief or something like that, and they're off with you. Well, those are times when we'd like to be in touch with them. So we got them a phone, but it doesn't have any internet or any kind of way that you can get online with it.
Yeah, and I'm put on here with our. I just redid our cell phone policy for our youth and.
You mean your kids?
No, for the youth of the church.
Oh, okay.
And sent that out. I sent the email out this morning. Your wife she's already filled y'all's out. So, but you can go in there and read it too.
You know it's always Jessica, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, she's on it, man. She's good.
It's always Jessica.
But you go in there and read it too, and it's just, and that's I set, and for the permission form for this trip, it says your kid's phone will not be with you in their room. All the phones are going to be out on a table in a public area. They will not have access to their phone late at night. They're going to be in a common area. This is not a place for them to game and all these things. And there's all these challenges that we have with these phones, and
that aren't phones. And so one thing, if you're looking for resources, this is something that I do with my kids, and it's not bulletproof. I have
Road to Hell's paved with good intentions. I had intentions to send out an email yesterday to the church about some things, and this is one of them.
I looked for it. I didn't see it.
Yeah,
I thought maybe
I didn't send it, and I got to working on. Man, I'm telling you, like Beth got me on these Google Docs, and I started making forms yesterday for the youth just to make it easier for our parents and easier for me.
Beth's such an awesome person.
She's so awesome.
Did I tell you what she did about the Halloween?
I did all this research. Well, that's what she said. She said, I did this. I said, how many did you get? She's like 20. And she tells me how many responses that we got through the trunk or treat.
Everybody, except for one person on there, said, I'd like to know more about the church.
That's awesome.
And so we had somebody step in and say, I want to make sure everybody, because what we were going to do with our trunk or treat this year, is kind of for those listening, is that
might not want to say all that.
We're using technology.
Yeah.
For our advantage. Mm-hmm. And so we used everybody's phone, for the glory of the Lord.
That's
so everybody
right.
that came through, hey, just scan our QR code. We'd like to get to know you.
Exactly. And push information to you.
And Beth, she created that Google Doc. She extrapolated the data or exported it, whatever, into a Excel file.
Yep.
And Beth and I created a list of ladies,
Yeah.
So they called I gave each lady 2 people on that list, and they're going through calling those folks and inviting them to our Sunday night meal, and you saw the one
absolutely
that I sent that
good feedback.
Yeah, I mean, so
Beth got me started on that, so I didn't even send out this email, but back to the thing for your social media, your phone's your kid's device. One, you can get on your kids on their iPhone right now and go to screen time. And there's part of screen time down in those settings where you can put to where your child cannot search explicit material. You can type in pornography, you can type in body parts, you can type in different things, and it will not allow them to search it unless they have a passcode. Passcodes can be broken. They can be revealed. So make your passcodes. So anyways, that's one way that you can protect your kids, even your teens. Don't give them the 4-digit passcode for any reason. And you said this too. I know that you've talked about this is that talking about parenting and don't tell your kids no because it's just an inconvenience for you in that moment.
Right.
And that's the same way when it comes to discipline. And discipline is not just spankings. Discipline is I need to have these structured things in my life. Well, part of discipline is not taking their phone away from them, but helping them not have the temptation to begin with. The second thing is that you can help is this will cost you $100 a year, and it's a thing called Bark. And BARK. And so what happens is if there's something that's bad that happened, it's going to bark to daddy, and it's going to tell dad if Aiden's on the phone. So Aiden can't get online, but somebody could text Aiden something explicit. Well, if
Carson texts Aiden something bad on his phone,
and as long as the phone is monitoring, and I don't know all the details with this, I'm still learning with it, but it barks to me if there was something that came up on Carson's thing. He was on a group message, and another dad was on there, and all that was mentioned was just something about it. It ended up being nothing, but it was something that Bark thought might have been violent nature or whatever. Right. And so it just notified me. And
like I'm gonna kick your tail.
And it screenshot it and sends it to me, and that was on a text message. Mm-hmm. We're not keeping track of people's text messages today.
Right.
So any account that he has, of course, a kid can make a fake account.
Sure.
But if he's got a social media account, which he does not, the only social media he has is YouTube. But if he's got YouTube, or if your kid has Facebook or whatever, it'll bark. You link those in. You can even ask your kid, we want your help with this. And all it is just a thing. It's not a regulation. All it is it's a way that we can use this. He's reaching an age now to where, when we have our kids, we want to prepare them for leaving and talk to them about these choices that they're making. And
why?
Because right,
legacy.
Exactly. And it just generates conversation.
And so let's be sure that we understand what we're talking about here. We're not talking about, let's go back to kind of
not spying on my kid.
Not spying on my kid. We're doing these things because what we're trying to do is help them to become the person they need to be as early as they can, so that they can fight against the people that the world's going to try to make them be when they're on their own.
We want our kids to soar when they leave the nest, but we're not challenging them.
Of course, we all want to say my kids are faithful, right?
Yeah.
That's a blessing, right? But that'll pale in comparison to eternity when they're with us in heaven.
If you're showing up at the garage and calling yourself a car, you're not a car.
Right.
If your kids are showing up at the building and you're saying that they're a motorcycle, that they're a Christian, they're not. The fruit's going to come out of that.
You put a dog in a duck parade, but it's still a dog.
Still going to be chasing them ducks.
Right.
And so I heard this message, and I've probably said this on this podcast or whatever before, but when talking about the golden eagle, we're here we've got them here at USM, and that mama eagle, they build their nest way high up in the mountains on these cliff tops, and you can Google golden eagle. They'll take deer off of these cliff tops and kill them or whatever. Anyways,
This thing must be huge.
well, all they have to do is if you get a 20-pound bird flying at 40 miles an hour, and he grabs a deer or this goat who's standing on the mountain, all he has to do is grab him for a second, get him off balance. The deer falls to his death, and the eagle goes down and does what it's supposed to do. That wasn't the whole illustration, but anyways, if you're into looking at crazy things, you can go look that up too.
But it may end up on bark.
But when they have these eaglets, or whatever they're called,
That sounds right.
one day the mama comes in to the nest, and she rips out everything that makes them feel soft, that makes them feel good.
You mean in the nest?
In the nest. She takes the rabbit fur out. She takes her feathers out. She takes all this stuff out that she's put in there to make them feel good and warm, and makes it to where if they're going to lay down, it's going to poke them, and it's going to hurt them to where they have to perch, because she knows one day they're going to need to use them talons.
Right.
Well, one day she singles one of them out and kicks them out of the nest, and this thing's falling, flapping its wings, and the mom and dad work together. And the daddy, before this thing falls to his death, swoops down and grabs a little eaglet up and brings him back and puts him in the nest. And you think, man, these animals are crazy.
He's telling the rest of them, like, man, I just thought I was going to make it, man.
I thought I was gonna make it.
Daddy, help me.
And so I could have this beautiful story, and the father comes down and swoops down and grabs him up. But you think about in real life, what that is we have to put things in our children's lives that when we have to put challenges in, and each time, each one of those falls, they're flapping their wings while they're getting stronger so that one day they'll be able to soar on their own. Well, I can't decide when my kid's 18 that he's going to be able to soar. People talk about homeschool kids and not getting interaction with people. That's baloney.
Oh, that's a garbage.
And so
let them hang around our kids.
yeah, when Coleman, if he wanted to get some pallets the other day from a place that he saw, so he can build a fort with them. And as expensive as wood is, it's like, yes, sir, we're going to do that.
Absolutely.
And so he's like, Dad, can you call him? Nope, you're going to call him.
Right.
And so he has to call this establishment to get to and so that's interaction. Well, when we have stuff for our kids, we've showed them a few times. We'll take food across the road to a neighbor or whatever. I'm not sending my kid cold turkey to somebody I don't know in that circumstance. But later on, it's like, you need to run this over to these old people. You need to run this over to these, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, you're going to go and you're going to interact with them. You're going to knock on the door. You're going to talk to them. But we have to put them in situations, period, to where there's going to be adversity and challenges.
That's biblical, Bob. Listen to the way this. I was studying with a guy yesterday about this very thing, and listen to the way James lays this out.
James 1.
James 1. Okay, now listen to this. Knowing. That means it's an absolute, right? Know this, like, hey, just want you to know this is going to happen. Knowing this, that the testing of your faith produces patience. So let's think about the diagram flow, the workflow here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know this, the testing of your faith produces patience. It's always healthy to ask the questions, to turn over the rocks. It's never healthy to sow wild oats. That's not what he's talking about there. He's not talking about like, just try, the Amish do this thing where they send their kids out amongst what they call the English, and then see if they come back home.
See if they come back.
Well, that's not what we're talking about here. What God is talking about is putting your kids in situations, putting yourself in situations, people being in situations, knowing this, the testing of your faith produces patience. So you got to test your faith. So you got to have this thing instilled in us first, this understanding of what substance and evidence. I got these things in my life that I know are absolute. I know that the Bible records these things. If I do these things, I can expect these outcomes. Knowing this, the testing of your faith, the things you understand, the things that you put in practice in your life, produces patience. So first of all, you got to have faith. Then that produces patience.
The test will produce something if you allow it.
That's right. And then secondly, look what he says, but let patience have its perfect work. It's got to work. It's got to take time, right? So patience, and it says, then you may be complete, perfect, lacking nothing. So just think about this. As a parent, we've got to be patient. There's not an adult in your 12-year-old's body. It's not. Even though we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do stupid things. Patience is about the outcome and not the middle come. Patience is about the outcome.
Yeah, the testing of your faith, when the Lord appears, that you may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus. That's the end.
That's right. So that's what you're seeing is patience really means, we think about patience as the waiting. That's not what patience is.
It's the enduring.
It's the seeing the end because of the endurance.
Mm-hmm.
So patience is the outcome and not the middle come. You know, I have to tell myself this all the time.
Yeah.
You've got these details in the middle that you need to do to get this outcome. These middle things are what consume me. These middle things are what drive me crazy. I'm just and I'm not making excuses for my actions, but I'm just an A, B, C, D, E. That's just a way that my mind works.
That's the way college football works, you know, and they're talking about...
Can we quit this?
If you're expecting... Well, it's just the truth. If you're expecting results on game day, you've had to put those things in. Kirby Smart, he said this week, and I don't know if anybody likes Kirby or doesn't like him, but he's efficient and he's smart. No pun intended.
Where's he at?
He's at Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, he just said that somebody asked him. They said, "So how's your team going to get ready for Tennessee's fast offense? You know, are you doing some extra conditioning for them?" He said, "Listen, if my boys aren't conditioned by now." He's like, we're not working on their conditioning this week. He's like, we work on this thing. We've been working on it for a long time.
Right.
And because there's going to be a test that's going to come.
That's how come they want to know how many starters are returning. That's why everybody wants to know how many's going pro, how many's going to return.
Yeah.
Right? How many people have put in the time that now can produce out of it what we expect? Well, you know, we've got to do that with our kids. We've got to help them understand, listen, the home is the best place to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
And we got to make it the best place to make a mistake.
That's what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
home is the best. If you got the environment, because your kids, like I tell mine, like we can always come back from a mistake, but we can't come back from a lie.
Yeah.
You can't hide it. You can't, you know, try to cover it up. You can't be David and Bathsheba. You have got, if you come clean, we can fix it. That doesn't not mean that there aren't consequences, because we can't allow certain things in our home. But know this, that the trying of your faith produces patience.
Yeah, me as a daddy, I've got to produce that safe place. Look at verse 19 of James 1. I'm so glad you brought this up. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And so if I'm going to produce, I've got to be able to listen to my children, listen to their mistake, be slow to wrath about it, and use those things as teaching moments. But it starts with me and my wife as well. That with the home, that I've got to be slow to speak, swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. And that's something that, man,
2 ears, 1 mouth.
Every single one of us have we got to be masters of our tongue. So I'm glad you brought this up. If you know, yesterday or Sunday, we did 10 vampire proofs for your marriage, and it was all from the book of James 1. And so there's 10 vampire proofs for our marriage from James 1. You can go on Kensington Woods and you can listen to that sermon if you want to. And those are principles that are brought out that you know, I gotta be a master of my tongue. We've got to master this thing. And well, you don't master a craft by not working on it.
Yeah, but just think
it's not
about
going to miraculously happen.
But think about the difference. Like it was an interesting thing for me to watch you weld, you know, those things that you made the other day.
Chris was he's so good at welding. that he's over there studying for his Bible lesson, and then he knows how my weld's going to be based on the sound of it.
Well, I've just done it for so long, but you
Exactly.
But you got to realize, like, I've studied for many Bible lessons with welding noise in the background.
And
in my lifetime.
Chris was so he really just wanted to say that I need to work on my Bible lesson. Really, what it was he didn't want he had to let me and my immaturity of welding, he had to step away from it. Is really what was. I was like, I know what Chris is doing right now. He knows that if he stands right here, he'll want to take it and just do it.
But I also understood, you know, and I do that as a daddy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I have to make.
I have to walk away
because I want it to be. There's a perfectionist in Chris,
mm-hmm.
right? And so like the you know, I just had to walk away, and like the best, and I watched it. You just got better as you went along.
Mm-hmm.
You improved your process. You improved the way you held it. You improved everything about it. But the only way you did it, Bob,
by learning,
was just doing it. You know, just burning your hand and doing stuff stupid. And by the end, you were knocking them out. And I knew that would happen. And I knew that I'd given you all the things that you needed. But the rest of it, it's like, Bob, let me give you a manual on how to ride a bicycle. Let me just give you this manual on how to ride this bicycle. Like if you ever wanted to know if your kids are ready to ride the bike, let me give you a perfect example. We were sitting out on the porch one day, and Bo said, I'm going to take my training wheels off. He said, I want to take my training wheels off. I said, okay. I'm not kidding you. He went to the shop, got the wrench, took his own training wheels off, and took off riding. And I told Jessica, like, well, if you ever wanted to know if they're ready to ride about training wheels, when they say I'm going to take them off myself, they're ready to go. Now, he's not like 18.
He's 14. He's 14 now. No, I'm just kidding.
I think he was like 6 or 7.
Right.
And you realize that,
good job, Bo.
Yeah, you're like, good job. You know, it's kind of a proud, you know, to him, it was just like, I just need to do this thing. You know, to you, you're like, good job. You know, and like, you know, you with your welding thing, we've done this many a times together now. Well, you know, I knew that this was a great time for you to get practice because you were in kind of a janky setup, you know, where you only had to weld a inch or half inch. Yeah, a half-inch long spot. And so that's not a good training ground, but it's a good one to get blisters on. It's a good one to learn, like, okay, these are the things I got to do. And so you did a great job, but you know, you did it because you did it. So it's going to be the same thing with our kids. We got to let them understand what life is going to have for them. Listen, I'm not scared of the world's talk on evolution to my kids. I'm not. The reason why so many kids get carried, the reason why so many parents get scared about these things is because they haven't had the talks with their kids about them and shown them the truth about them.
Well, and those parents they're not trained in it. And so I had a trainer sitting over there who was experienced, sitting in a chair that if I needed you, I could go, hey, what should I do in this situation? Because sometimes the welding wire comes out of the tip, and well, I didn't know what I needed to do in that moment. And I said, what do I do on this thing? You're like, well, grab them welding pliers over there and grab them out, took the tip off, pulled it out, cut it. This is the length that you need it, put it back on. You went and sat back in your chair. And so I needed you in that moment, and so we've got to. But if I'm not building a legacy of swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, then I'm not going to be building a legacy where it is a safe place for them to learn.
Well, that's just the example is that, you know, like the reason why I know what a good weld sounds like is because I've heard them so many times, and so like that's an illustration that you can use in every way in your life. Listen, you don't need book chapter. Daddies, listen to me. Listen to me real close, because you may not know every book, chapter, and verse in your life, but if something doesn't sound right, it's probably not right, period. You investigate it right then, okay? If something doesn't sound right. Now, I can listen to somebody welding, and I can say that's not a good weld, and it's because it doesn't sound a certain way when they're welding a certain type of material. And so there's going to be things that are going to come up in your life, and you're going to think like, I don't know about this. I need to think of something doesn't sound. That's okay to say pause. Right now, I could have went over there, and Bob could have been welding just fine. You know, you could have been welding just fine, but it didn't sound right to me. And I know what a good weld should sound like. Now, it could be environmental factors. It could be somebody working.
Oh, I've learned from lots of things on that. One is if I'm not close enough to the weld. Another thing is if I don't have a good enough connection. I didn't know those things that day.
Yeah, and so those things are just things that produce the right thing, right? And so I've done it so long, I know what it sounds like. Daddies, I'm just going to tell you. The reason why God gave you sons after you were big is because you had to go. Is growing up. You talk about the stories about growing up after you've done it, right? When I was growing up, listen. Use the thing God's gave you. You want a legacy? God's given you a mind. He's given you a heart. And I guarantee you, if you're still listening to this podcast right now, he's giving you a passion.
And here's another thing too. And we're so tempted to end these podcasts. All right. But I do want to say another thing too, is humility is so big. Like our Savior, Jesus was so humble. I mean, the way he came to the earth, the way he treated people, the way he talked in actions and things. And so, but the one thing about our Savior is he didn't mess up, but he still chose to be humble. Well, I mess up, and that gives me even more opportunities to be humble. And so right now I'm teaching Carson. By the time he hears this podcast, he's going to know the result of this. But he has something special that was very expensive that he bought as an investment. And in helping me, he made a mistake that I make a lot of times. His mind got sidetracked, and he left the thing outside overnight. And while it was not a danger to anything, to anybody or whatever, this airsoft gun looks like it looks like a real gun, and he left this thing out overnight. And so while he made this mistake, though, Courtney called me this today, and she's like, so what I did is I took his gun and I hid it, and I'm not going to say on the podcast where I hid it.
In case
he asked me if I put it in the gun safe, I said nope. And so when he asked me a question, I didn't lie to him. I asked him more questions, and so this Dad, have you seen it? Well, what'd you do with it?
Right. Right.
So I didn't lie to you, son.
Right.
And I know he's going to listen to this podcast. But she called me and she said, you know that like what you're teaching him is that this is a mistake that you make too. And I said, I know that. And I said, this is going to be an opportunity for me to have my hat in my hand and have a humble heart and talk to my son about Daddy makes this mistake too. And I want you to know that God sometimes is really gracious to us and doesn't allow some things to be stolen away from us. And but I have to. This is something I have to work on all the time. I mean, I told y'all today. What I come here and what am I missing right now? And Courtney my wallet. Yeah. So
right.
I've spent the last.
But I also told you that like they make these tags because I have the same problem over and over and over again. You know, there's like 4 things I lose constantly. My knife, my keys, my wallet, and my gun.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember where I put my gun at. And so those things are just constant. So, you know, for $100, Samsung will supply you, for us Android guys, a little tag you can put on thing, and it'll always tell you the geolocation of it. Hey. And if you're in your room, you can use your camera, and it'll tell you, like, it'll even pinpoint it on your camera.
So you can put a tag on something like that?
Yeah, a Samsung. I don't know about y'all stuff.
Yeah. I know you got those little tags that Apple can do or whatever.
But either way, you know, like, but Bob, even though.
But so, yeah, I get to be humble and I get to use that. And so I told her, I said, honey, you understand, like, this is not something I'm going to be yelling at him about. This is not something that I'm going to be, like, breathing down his throat about. I'm going to be able to talk to him with humility with mistakes that I make, and I don't want you to make these same mistakes too. And we got to put things in our lives to work on them.
And that's fine. You know, and here's a lie that Satan tells us. I know we've been at it for a while.
When you think you're not good enough, look at Rahab.
Yeah, and
God will use you.
Listen, man, like there is no doubt, and this idea, like people will say, like, well, I've heard parents say, well, like, I did the same things. I don't feel like, listen, I do the same things, and I still have to discipline my kids. Just because I'm struggling with it at 40 is because it wasn't disciplined out of me properly.
Yeah.
So the right solution is then to let my kids go through these same foolish, you know, like fumbling along at 40 years. No, I don't want them to do that. So it's not I'm being hypocritical. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saving you the headache at 40 of having to do this with your kids.
I told my kids Saturday morning, y'all got to get in here. You got to clean this room up. And guess what? I shut my door and started cleaning my room too.
Yeah, I mean, it just, at the end of the day, that's just what it boils down to. It's not that you're not being hypocritical. If you're hypocritical and you say go clean up your room, and then you just lay on the bed in your underwear and play, you know,
Eat Cheetos and play Xbox till 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely hypocritical. But that's not what you're saying. You know, you're saying like just because, listen, you know, we're going to go evangelize. Okay, I need to get better at that. Like, I feel like I just need to keep doing it and keep growing in it. I'm going to, boys, you need to study your Bible more. The older I get, the more I feel like I just want to study and study and study and let it consume me. And it's not that I don't study my Bible, but I know that I got to keep growing in it. Just like, you know that you're better at picking up your stuff than Carson is. You know that. But that doesn't mean that you're perfect in it. But what that means is you're trying to perfect it in Carson.
Yeah, it's got to get to the point that he has the drive to do it himself and doesn't have to be told to do it.
Yeah, and so none of these things are wrong. I mean, what you're talking about is imperfect people. God called elders, to be these people that could rule the shepherd the church. These are imperfect people.
Peter denied Jesus, and John, they all scattered. They all walked away.
One run away naked. For Pete's sake, one wanted run away naked in that event, and he had to be in the upper room in the book of Acts. Everybody was there but Judas because they had to swap his spot with Matthias. So the dude that ran away naked, I don't know who that was, but one of them ran away naked, and he's got to stand there and look the rest of them in the eye and think, you know what? I'm always going to be the one. I'll know it, and he'll remember it more than they will.
Transformation doesn't happen overnight. You gotta work at it, and Peter was not, and he was not ready to be an elder the day that Jesus restored him.
That's right.
And but Jesus knew the potential, and he saw it in him and said, "Feed my sheep, Peter. Take care of my church." And so sometimes I think on this podcast, and we may have did this today too. And if you're still listening to this point, there is no place that's better to have your children than in the church and active in the church and constantly in the church.
The success rate goes through the roof.
It's got to be in the home first, and that's all that we implement. That's what we're talking about. Chris and I both gave up careers and gave up our time with our families. We don't sit on the pews with our kids. Will not sit on the pews with their grandparents because of how much we love the church and how much we want souls to be saved. And so we gave it up, and we moved states away to work with the church. And we love the people at KW and how much they're influencing our children's lives. And I'm telling you what, I mean, this is not no way, shape, form, or fashion bragging about ourselves, but I want to brag on the church that I know personally that me and you've had offers to go other places to preach, but the influence of our people at this place, man, it is the number one driving factor for me and choosing not to go somewhere else.
Yeah, the grass may be greener somewhere else, but I know I got good grass here.
And yeah, when you look at Ecclesiastes and Solomon talking about you got two birds in the one bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Yeah,
and there's so much wisdom in that. So use what you have, use what's right in front of you, and no way, shape, form, or fashion are we degrading the church. But the home's got to be primary, and the church has got to be secondary for us.
And it will be.
Yeah.
If you make the home a primary, the church will be a secondary.
Well, in period, it's going to be that way.
That's what I'm saying. The byproduct of that is going to be there's going to have a strong church. Period.
Yeah. Or you're going to have a weak church. If the home is not primary in the Bible, it's going to be primary in something. Either it's going to be in God or it's going to be in whatever.
Right.
I'm passionate about Tennessee football, but my kids understand. They know what comes first.
That's right.
And so my passion, and that's the other thing, is my passion for my sports. We've talked about this before too, that I can rattle off stats or whatever. I mean, I can tell you that Tennessee scored more points against Alabama than what anybody has since 1906. But if I can't tell them, if I can't tell my kids, if they don't know things about the Lord and particular people's lives, and if they're not seeing it evident,
if we're not forming the character that they need to be in their lives, the world will.
I'm failing.
You're failing. So hey, we appreciate you guys, and
we've not mastered it all, and obviously we've not mastered it on this podcast. But listen, we hope that we gave you something.
You work on mastering it too, because we'll all do it together better that way.
And however we can, if we can do something better, hit us up, comment, leave your hit the like, hit the button, hit all that stuff, and share this with people if you think they need to hear it.